So you might have seen or heard the comments made a few weeks ago by Andor's show creator Tony Gilroy that if Andor were being made now, it's very unlikely they'd be able to make the same show, considering they wouldn't be given the same budget they got when starting Andor 5 or 6 years ago. Tony Gilroy stated that part of the reason they were able to make Andor the show it is, and part of the reason it is successful, is because they fought for money. Disney gave them the money they asked for. But with the recent decline in streaming, with the recent decline in people using Disney Plus, it would be hard to justify being given the same amount of money to create a similar show. And just this week, the ratings for Andor Season 2 were revealed, including how many minutes people spent watching Season 2 versus Season 1 versus other Star Wars series, and the results are quite surprising, considering Andor is still all over the internet over a month after it finished. Today I'm going to break down a bunch of the stats that have been revealed about Andor Season 2 and how these affect the future of Star Wars series. Because the implications here are quite high, and I think they will heavily influence where Disney spends their money next. But I also want to talk about the overall problem with other recent Star Wars series from the past few years, and how perhaps they can learn from what's happening here in the direction of Star Wars. Where are we going? No one knows. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. So I want to start by saying and giving credit to Jar Jar Jargon. He has done this full breakdown of these stats, created these tables, and has a great analysis over on his YouTube channel, so I definitely recommend going and checking him out if you want to see something more detailed. But basically, to summarize where Andor Season 2 has landed, its viewership is still not even close to that of The Mandalorian or even The Mandalorian Season 3, and also not even close to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Also not close to Boba Fett, and this presents a much larger problem for Star Wars, which is trust. People have lost their trust in Disney and their trust in the direction of the Star Wars franchise and Star Wars series. Andor, I think, was the first step in restoring that trust, but basically since the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, since the Book of Boba Fett, and since Mando Season 3, the viewership in Star Wars series has significantly declined. Andor Season 2 had a budget of $290 million, the most expensive Star Wars season ever created. Mando Season 1 had a $100 million budget, Mando 2, $120 million budget. And yes, there are more episodes in Andor Season 2, so you need more money, but it's significantly more money. As well as this next stat is really interesting. Per minute watched, Andor is the most expensive Star Wars series ever created. And yes, even though some of Andor Season 2's IMDb ratings are among the highest of any Star Wars ever made, all the way up in the 9s, it seems to have come at a great cost. Now, all of this data is based on the Nielsen Top 10. Nielsen is a company that tracks data from streaming platforms, tracks these series, and basically tells us how many millions of minutes have been watched of each series in the top 10. Now, the only times a Star Wars series has ever topped these charts was for Andor Season 2's finale week and The Mandalorian Season 2 finale week, which involved Luke coming to take Grogu away. The difference here is that Mandalorian episode goes for less than 40 minutes, whereas there are 3 episodes for the Andor Season 2 finale, all included in this data, and each going for roughly 40 to 50 minutes. So basically, yes, even though Andor was at the top for the finale week, it was partly due to there being much more of it to watch, which also means there's a high production cost for the amount of time per episode. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm a numbers guy. I'm not. So if you want a more detailed understanding of all of this, like I said, I'd really recommend you go check out Jar Jar Jargon, who's put together all of these numbers and presents them on his channel. But the short version of it is that Andor was expensive to make and still made Disney a lot less money than series like Obi-Wan.
How rude!
The other side of this as well, which was also mentioned by Jar Jar Jargon, Andor is for a more adult audience. Not everyone cares about Andor, and it feels like, yes, even though it was super popular, it's kind of only popular within the niche. Yes, it's seeing more old legacy Star Wars fans return and watch Star Wars because, hey, there's a new show that appeals to an older audience, but it's certainly not selling the same amount of toys, selling the same amount of merchandise that a series like Obi-Wan would, that a series like The Mandalorian would. Even though Andor Season 3, I know a lot of people found disappointing, imagine the sales that generated for Disney versus Andor. Imagine the amount of Grogu's sold, because of the amount of kids watching, because even the adults watching and buying merch. There's no way they're making anywhere close to the same amount of money on Andor merch as they are with other Star Wars series merch.
Grogu.
And again, this is another part of a problem. A super expensive show that, yes, is highly rated, that, yes, I think so many people will agree, myself included, is some of the best Star Wars ever made, and yet, unfortunately, it's not necessarily making Disney a lot of money, which means I think in future they're less likely to take a risk on a series like this and make another series like this. But I always feel like all these stats and data need to be taken with a grain of salt, because Andor is the type of show that I think a lot of people are going to come back to and rewatch or start watching in a few years' time. I think it will have a much stronger long-term audience and a much more evergreen audience than even Obi-Wan Kenobi, than Ahsoka, than The Acolyte. More people are likely going to watch Andor over the next few years than these other Star Wars series, maybe because someone tells them to watch it, maybe someone tells them it's a good Star Wars show, maybe someone tells them it's the best Star Wars show ever made, so they want to go check it out. And I feel like it will continue to have a longer lasting legacy, become more of a cult classic, and potentially earn Disney a lot more money in the long run. But again, it's likely still not going to come close to The Mandalorian or to Obi-Wan, with these large recognizable characters that everyone knows and associate with Star Wars. When you ask very casual Star Wars fans or non-Star Wars fans, hey, have you heard of Andor? Usually they say, not even who's Andor, they say, what's Andor? But if you say, oh, have you heard of The Mandalorian? Have you heard of Obi-Wan? Everyone knows who those characters are. They've broken into the mainstream, and this is part of the problem I think Andor has. Yes, even though it's the best Star Wars we've had in such a long time, and some of the best potentially ever, I don't think it's ever necessarily going to become a mainstream kind of show. The everlasting effect of it will be something like an indie film that, hey, maybe a lot of people will see, but will never be able to compete with, you know, the superhero movies. Something like The Avengers or The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, Boba Fett even. It's just not the same and doesn't unfortunately have that widespread appeal. And when it costs even more to produce, even though it was so worth it and I'm so glad they created this show, I think from a business point of view, Disney will see it as not necessarily a failure, but just something they can't do too often.
I loved you.
But that's where the trust comes back into it, because they can't keep doing what they've done over the past few years. Imagine the Obi-Wan Kenobi series had been given the love, attention, and care that Andor received. Imagine Obi-Wan was given the budget of Andor. And yes, I know Obi-Wan is partly hindered because it was a COVID show. A lot of it was made during COVID, during the lockdowns. So there were other limitations at play, but I'd be so interested to see if they'd given Obi-Wan the same attention as Andor has received financially, even production time, on location shooting instead of using the volume. All of these factors put together could have created something so different, and this is what Disney needs to do from here forward. They need to continue to re-establish trust in the fan base, because we were angry. A lot of people haven't liked recent Star Wars series, which I think is completely justified. Andor seems to be a series that's brought a lot of fans back to Star Wars and a lot of older fans back to Star Wars and re-established some faith in the franchise. And this is something Disney needs to do more of. They need to build more trust. They need to create more series like Andor, even if they are spending more money, to re-establish our relationship with them, to foster that, and to make us once again connect with the Star Wars we love.
This is my boy!
I think there's a lot of room to play around with in the Star Wars galaxy in terms of the type of series they can be making, and I certainly think there's a lot of room to grow from where they are now. The overall message here, though, is that Star Wars needs to be given the love, care, and support that Andor has received. We need these kind of creative visionaries, directors, writers, show creators to come into Star Wars and give us something that is maybe a bit of a risk, something that could potentially cost a lot of money, but something that is going to pay off in the long run, that's going to leave us all feeling so satisfied and so glad that we're fans of this franchise. Andor, I think, felt so rewarding. I'm proud to be a Star Wars fan because of Andor. I'm so thrilled that something like Andor was created in Star Wars, as it could have been made in another franchise or just been a standalone thing altogether. But the fact that it's Star Wars, the fact it's created with the Star Wars lens in the Star Wars galaxy, makes me extremely excited for the future of Star Wars. I just hope that based on this data that we know now, based on the viewership, based on the amount of money Andor cost, that Disney can find some justification to continue in this direction for Star Wars. Take risks, spend money, and deliver great results.
Make it worth it.
What do you think then? Can Disney afford to make another series like Andor? And where do you think we're headed next? Do you think they're going to make decisions based on this data? Let me know in the comments. Also subscribe so I can get to 1 million before Battlefront 3 releases. Come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, join my Discord and TikTok, and thanks for watching. Always remember,
stay bombastic.